everyone, this is Gail, and welcome to my hashtag Be Bodacious channel tonight, where we are all about not letting life get in the way of living. So, this is National Service Dog Month, and in honor of that, we're going to be talking about service dogs. I've been a handler since 2007. A lot of you all have asked me lots of questions, so I've gone back through the comments and compiled those, and that's what we are talking about tonight. So, yay! I'm super excited to see everybody that's here. And if you are coming in on the replay, please subscribe if you have not done so already. And if you're here, welcome back. Don't forget to give me a like on the live stream because y'all know that really helps. Y'all know the drill. So, thank you all so much. The question tonight is, how much does a service dog cost? And we're going to be talking about that. The other thing we're going to be talking about is owner training, a little bit about owner training versus getting a dog from a program or kind of going a hybrid combination of both. So we're going to be talking about that. It's probably one of the most common questions that I'm asked. We're also going to be touching on how do you get a service dog, because that's a really big deal. And I think that there's a lot of times we have questions about service dogs in general, whether it's how much does a service dog cost, to where do you get a service dog, how do you get a service dog, and there's not a really good place to go for those answers. So I'm hoping to serve as a resource for you all. All of these answers are based on my experience as a service dog handler. Like I said, 2007 is when I came into this, and there wasn't a lot of answers. So let me turn this down and off. Hey, we've got Candy, the wee service dog, in the house. We are really blessed tonight. So, hi, Laurel. Welcome. Welcome. It is good to see you. So, real quick, a couple of things that we're not really going to be talking about is therapy dogs, therapeutic support dogs. We might touch on that a little bit. We might touch on signal dogs. But we're not going to talk about miniature horses, which are also assistance animals. Emotional support animals, I'm not going to talk about, at least not tonight. But maybe Candy would come and join us. She had or has an emotional support animal that she trained to become her service dog. So she is much more able to answer questions on that. But tonight we're going to be talking a lot about costs. So I have my notes here because I am always making notes. Whether I'm out in the van doing van life and traveling in the RV with my husband, anytime I'm doing something, I'm making notes. So when I was looking for a service dog and trying to decide which way to go, I did a lot of calling, a lot of checking, and I made, ta-da, lots of notes. So let me just remind everybody that any questions that I answer, it's all coming from my experience. I'm not a professional. These are not legal. So check with the ADA law about that. There's a link down in the description box where you can check that. And there also, if you download this, like I do, and you look at the very bottom of either your paper copy or on the screen, you will see the information for how to contact the Department of Justice, who oversees the ADA law, and you can ask them questions. And I've asked them tons of questions through the years, and they have always been super, super nice. So there you go. That out of the way. Let's see. My mind just went blank. It does that sometimes. Anyhow, my service dogs have been about medical alert, mobility, seizure alert and response, helping me with asthma attacks, and waking me up at night if I start wheezing, and I haven't woken up yet because they can hear that. They've got a sharper sense of hearing. So what happened was my first service dog was actually owner trained. So I can give you a perspective on owner training as well as a perspective on going through a program. Now, Candy the Wee Service Dog, she just commented, yes, definitely in the future, I'll do a live stream on ESA. Yes! There we go. That would be great. Laurel has joined us several times before, and she is always an amazing guest. Very knowledgeable, very passionate, and exactly what we need. So thank you. She's also pretty darned amazing in general. So, okay. All right. So first, let me talk about owner training a service dog, and then I'll get into the program dog stuff. And if you have a question, go ahead, type it in the chat, because even if it's not directly related to how much does a service dog cost, we're still talking about service dog training costs and other things about service dogs, so other aspects as well. So toss your questions in. So let me just tell you a little bit about my journey. So my first service dog, I already said I have asthma and so forth a minute ago, but I also have epilepsy. So my first service dog was owner trained. I looked for a year and a half for him before I found him. Easily a year and a half. It may have been closer to 2 years. Because dogs, as puppies, have to be able to pass a temperament test to determine if they might have the potential to be a service dog. So I kept looking at all these dogs, and there were some really sweet, sweet dogs out there, but none of them had the ability to pass that temperament test. And in the trainer that I talked to, who's going to work with me, he was like, you have to have the dog that will pass this test. So I had it like beaten into my head, sort of, as far as the test. And it was very, very simple things, rattling coins in a can to make a long, loud noise and doing it for a minute. Actually, probably not a minute, a few seconds, but it seems like a minute, right? And seeing how the dog responds to that. Does he come to it and he's naturally curious, or does he run and hide? So those things like that and more go into the service dog test, the preliminary, stage 1 test. Found the dog. His name was Tomlin. He was a beautiful, sweet dog. Husky. We thought we were getting a Husky German Shepherd mix. Instead, we got a Husky Golden Retriever mix, and he was amazing. But he was a challenge to train, as all service dogs are. And we worked with a trainer on him, and we got him to the point where he would respond over 90% of the time when we told him to do something. And I liked the owner training experience, but it takes a lot to owner train your dog, because you have to be, and you have costs that go into owner training a dog. So a lot of people will go that route because they hear about the waiting period that programs often have, the cost that's involved with getting a dog from a program, and they hear, just these stories that are like that. Well, I looked at all that, and I already knew from having the previous experience what I was looking at. And you always have to train your dog every single day when you're owner training. And that gets to be a real challenge because there's nobody really to hold you accountable per se. Like, you will go and sign up and you will take classes generally once a week on training your service dog and how to work with your service dog. But during the other 6 days of the week, it's up to you. and you have to work with your service dog. And if you don't keep up, then your service dog doesn't get the skills. And that is critical, especially in the early stages of service dog training. Any kind of dog training, you've got to keep up with it. Let me see. Let me bring up Candy's comment. That is the criteria to help lessen the chances of a service dog prospect to wash out. Yeah. And it's shaking the cans, it's holding the dog, it's flipping the dog over on its back and rubbing its tummy and seeing how it responds and other things that go into it. The thing is, there's no guarantees. Your dog may wash out. That means that he will not be able to be a service dog because of various reasons throughout the whole process. And that's why I think it's really important to work with a trainer and not do it completely DIY. You can. I just know from experience, there's probably a million ways that I really would have messed up my service dog's training had I not gone to a trainer for help. And so typically what you do is, if you're owner training with a trainer, is you'll sign up and you'll take the first series of classes. Now, something I recommend that you do is take a toilet training or potty training class for your dog. And usually that's just a real little short class. They're not very expensive. I think PetSmart was like $25 for the toilet training class. But it gives you a chance to see how this trainer interacts with the dogs and helps you decide if that's the trainer for you to work with or not. So that's why I always suggest taking the training class for toilet training. And then, assuming everything goes well and you like the trainer, then talk to the trainer about the next stage. And there's generally a few stages. You'll start off with the beginning stages of puppy manners, sit, stay, come, those very basics. Then you'll roll into some intermediate courses where you work with the dog a little bit, and then you start doing some little tricks and things like that. Because to a service dog, the skills, the tasks, those are their tricks, okay? So after you get those two stages, then you typically roll into like a third stage of training, and that's where your service dog learns how to be a service dog. Now, that may be classes or it may be one-on-one with the trainer, which can be very expensive, but if that's what you need, then that's what you need, and your trainer will guide you through this. And one of the things that you have to understand about training your dog yourself is that it takes a year and a half easy for your dog to fully have the maturity that it takes to be a service dog. It's a combination of training and maturity because your dog is only going to grow up so fast. So whether you go with a DIY project of training your dog yourself, the owner training, or you work with a trainer, owner train with a trainer, or you go to a program, you're basically losing that first year, year and a half on a dog that you can use because, like I said, until they're 18 months, they're not fully trained. You can't rely on them. And it's just the maturity level of the dog. No matter what the quality of the training is, your dog may be able to do a couple of things, but to really get to the full point where they can pass an all-important public access test, which is the final test that service dogs have to be sure that they can go out and perform in public. In order to get to that point, it's going to be 18 months. Now, in some dogs, it's going to be 2 years. It may be a little over. A few dogs might be able to do it a little early, but the vast majority is going to fall in that 18 months to 2 year mark. So when I was looking for a dog, I kept all of that in mind and was trying to look at the training too. Let me jump into the chat real quick. I'll get into that. Um, Candy says, yes, owner training a dog is not for the faint of heart or a newbie that has never done this before. I cannot agree more. Case in point on how easy it is to ruin a service dog. I was always raised with the idea that you would tell a dog to sit and you would pat its hips or put slight pressure, not much, but just slight pressure on his back hips to make the dog sit. That's the way I was always raised. My grandparents had, a certain viewpoint about dogs. They were working dogs, more of a farm animal type of thing. So that's how I was shown to teach a dog to sit. In a service dog, you have just taught that dog to sit every time you put pressure on its back. The problem with that is if you are doing mobility or you ever fall, or if a child comes running up and throws himself around your dog's neck and his dog and he wants to hug, you're going to the floor because that's what you've trained the dog to do. The other thing is leftovers. And if you are planning on taking your dog to a restaurant and you give him an occasional leftover treat of people food, guess what? When you go to a restaurant, he wants that bite of people food. So those two things are really easy to ruin your dog. And there are a few people out there that will say, oh, I give my service dog people food all the time, and he goes into restaurants with me. And once in a while, you'll hear somebody that says they don't have a problem with that. But most often, what happens is the next comment is, he's always staring at me while I eat. Or I'll give him a little bite from the table. Neither one of those are acceptable behavior in a service dog because your service dog is focused on the food. And if your service dog is focused on the food, guess what he's not focused on? He's not focused on you. Let me go back into the chat here. I want to jump in with Laurel's comments. Laurel said, I did on my own. However, and this is key, you all, she got involved with a group that were owner training their dog. Groups are very helpful, and it's a combined wisdom there. So if you can't owner train, with a trainer, if you can get with a group, that's hugely helpful. And some groups actually have people who are trainers and they're training their dogs after having experience. Maybe they're retired from training, or maybe they've had a career change and this is what they want to do. So you'll sometimes find people with great expertise who are in these groups. And she says, okay, here you go. Case in point, there were 2 animal trainers in the group. Also, there was one person that was an animal behaviorist. You need both kinds of trainers to be successful in owner training. Yes, animal behaviorists are huge. These are people, often veterinarians, who have got specialized training in spotting animal behaviors. And so they can help you anticipate, because part of training your dog is anticipating what your dog is going to do. It's knowing the behavior. If your dog is out there and you're playing fetch and you're having a good time and your dog pauses and kind of looks at you, that may be a signal that your dog is fixing to run the opposite direction and not come to you that you want or need. So that behavior, you might not spot it, but an animal behaviorist will spot it and say, hey, watch it when your dog does this. Also, if you have got a dog that's a diabetic alert dog, let's say, then an animal behaviorist can help you recognize when your dog is alerting. And we may talk about some of that in just a minute about recognizing alerts. Candy also says, I'm sending you a group picture of us at the Cheesecake Factory. Awesome. Will that be coming by email? And is that something you want me to show? Let me know. Stellar Piper's in the house. Hi, Stellar Piper. Welcome. It's good to see you. Last week it was hopping crazy in here. I don't know how many people we're going to have today, but we got rated. I'm not really sure what channel sent everybody over, but it was completely crazy. We had 100 and something people in here total, a peak of 84. So it was all hands on deck, greeting and saying hi. So I'm glad to see both Laurel and Stellar Piper here because I know you're going to help me with that. So yay! Thank you. Let's see. So when I was looking at owner training versus owner training with a trainer versus a program for my second dog, I had to sit down and remember what all went into it with my first dog. The constant training, the classes, the having people right there that I could talk to, that could kind of smack my hand if I did something wrong, those kinds of things. The energy that it takes to train your own dog is very, very high. This is not something that you can necessarily do effectively if you've got a mobility problem or if you get tired often, because you got to keep that energy up because you are working with a puppy. And puppies tend to be high energy, but also your puppies tend to be, when they're service dog puppies, they tend to be very inquisitive. So that means there's more watching the puppy to make sure that the puppy is safe and not getting into trouble. So all of that factors into the energy level that you have to own or train your dog. So when I was looking for my second dog, I really had to keep that in mind. And it was something that after looking at it, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do it. But before deciding for sure, I also made some phone calls and did some checking and looked to see what the cost of getting the dog trained with a trainer was going to run and to see which would be most effective. And that really opened my eyes because I think there is this perception that owner training is cheaper than going through a program. And everybody needs to save money these days, right? So if owner training is cheaper than a program dog, that looks very enticing. But what I found was that's not necessarily the case. In fact, when I got to looking, owner training was not going to save me anything. And I'll get into that. Let me show you a photo that I just found of my first service dog. He and I were out traveling. We stopped at this little, it's in Damascus, Virginia. This was an old railroad depot. And we're sitting here. You can see the railroad tracks. We've got this piece of equipment. And there is Tomlin, perfectly posed with his little happy face that he always had. But he was high energy. But he wound up being a wonderful service dog, very well trained. And when he passed away in 2020, my world just shattered. But fortunately, I had already been looking at service dog programs and I already had my mind kind of made up which way I wanted to go. So let me go back to here. Laurel being Candy the wee service dog, I did want to comment about feeding a dog, quote, human food occasionally would be a distraction. However, for those who feed their service dog homemade dog food, they don't get distracted when around food. And I think that's a good point The other thing is they know they recognize their own food. So it's different than just general food. Like if somebody comes up to them, like what happened with me with Pipsy when somebody from a restaurant came and said, "Hey, I've got something for your dog." And he's putting his hand right in front of Pipsy's nose saying, "I have this piece of chicken." Well, you don't want your service dog to recognize that, okay, as their own food. And Candy's saying dogs who eat homemade dog food are not distracted or interested in food in restaurants or grocery stores. And that's because they know the type of food that they get. Would you agree on that, Candy, or disagree? What do you think? Uh, so, anyway, when I was looking at which way to go, I looked at my previous experience and I looked at the costs involved because how much does a service dog cost factored in because all of your service dog training costs and so forth. And I also looked at the fact that, I had a year and a half of not being able to use my dog while the dog was in training. And through that time period, I was still going to have to buy treats, a crate, a bed, the harness, all of the gear, the insurance on the dog, and have all those expenses the toys, the dog food, the vet bills, the spaying, the neutering, the chip, all of that on a dog that I couldn't use because the dog hadn't grown up. So let me go through some of the things that I have down because people ask, are service dogs expensive? And we're going to look at that. Okay. We're also going to talk some about where to get a service dog. So I found out when I was looking at the prices, I found out that owner training was not going to save me any money at all. And in fact, it was going to be more expensive. Part of this does depend on the service dog program that you choose. Some are more expensive than others. The program that Pipsy came from, that is $7,000 now for your dog. And you got to remember that all of the expenses for that time period before you get your dog, that's all covered under the program. So it's kind of expenses you're going to pay anyway. But while you're paying that, somebody else is training your dog. Also, from looking at everything, I determined that I wanted a dog that was trained in prison. Now, why do you want a dog that's trained in prison? Maybe what you're thinking. And let me go back to Candy here. Candy says, exactly, Gail. A service dog who only occasionally has a bite of human food sees it as a unique treat. As you stated, service dogs who eat homemade food don't find it interesting. Yeah, because they know what's theirs. They do. Also, I meant to have a link pulled up here I'm going to talk about in a minute. Okay, so when I got to looking at that, I looked at all the costs, and I was really surprised to find out that going with a training program was going to be cheaper than going with a owner training. And I wanted a prison trained dog because they get 24/7 training when they're in prison. They're always with the inmate. The only place that they don't go with the inmate is to the shower. Otherwise, they have 24/7 training. Now, you're not going to get that if you're owner training because you've got a class usually once a week and you're going to be working with the dog the rest of the time. And your experience level is not to the same level as a prisoner who has been trained and is working with a mentor to train a dog all the time. The level of training is just not there, I felt like, for me. Now, people who have tons of experience training their own dogs and trainers may disagree with that, and that's fine. But for me, it just was not going to equal the same level. So I knew that. I knew that's what I wanted. And I was looking around, and when it comes to dogs, you can either get a pure breed or a designer breed, if you will, or you can go to the shelter or get a dog from a friend. That's usually the ways that you would get a dog, the 4 ways. And purebred dogs and some of the designer breeds have the advantage in the sense that they already know the lineage and they already know how the temperament of the lineage has been for however many generations that they've bred the dog. You don't have that if you go to a shelter. And one of the things that I ran across when I was looking for shelter dogs to become my first service dog is some of them had already had the treats from the table, had already been trained to sit with the pressure on the back legs, and had already had sometimes some emotional trauma from what they went through from whatever happened before they got to the shelter or from being in the shelter itself. They learned how to be withdrawn or how to be reactive. And when you have a service dog that's reactive, that's a very tough situation to be in because you can't have that. There will be other dogs when you go out in public. So you don't want one that's dog reactive or dog selective. And that made it really hard to find a dog at the shelter. But when I was looking around for prices, hope, 1,500 to 2,000 was the lower end of what it looked like I could expect if I went to a breeder. And $300 was about what I was looking at if I went to a shelter. And there are some times when you can get a dog sponsored and so forth from a shelter, but by and large, I was looking at $300 minimum. So knowing that you have this lineage, I went ahead and decided, okay, pure breed. So that was going to run the $1,500 to $2,000. The training that I was going to need to get my dog to the service dog level, when I was looking at the training classes and calling around, those were all running between $4,000 and $5,000 for the training classes. I was like, and that's because you've got to take a series of classes. The other thing is you have to have those classes in series, and you don't want a long pause between those classes because dogs are like people and they can forget if you don't keep up with their training. And a lot of us say, oh yeah, I'm going to, and then we don't. If you've ever started a project and not completed it on schedule, you know what I'm talking about. So you have to be able to afford those classes and keep up with it. So $4,000 to $5,000 is what I was looking at it, and part of that did include one-on-one time with a trainer to learn how to brace and balance, because they don't necessarily have classes on that per se. So that's when you may have to work with a private trainer one-on-one. That does not include, that's just for the classes. That does not include your gas to get to and from the classes one day a week. And I don't know about you all, but I knew I was going to wind up making extra runs through Starbucks or fast food or something on the way to and from. Whereas if I was home, I wouldn't be out running and going through the Starbucks, And Candy says, here we go. Going back to the food, also it takes a lot of research in learning the dog's needs. Yes, it does. And she says, if you want, I can expound on owner training and homemade dog food in the future. Perfect. That would be great. As she says, you need to know the breed characteristics, basically what breed originally was trained for. For instance, Candy is a Chihuahua, and they were originally bred for burrowing down in a mole tunnel, which gives her the advantage when it comes to doing things like burrowing down into small places to retrieve dropped items. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, service dogs can be any breed. Any breed. Because it's not the breed that makes the dog, it's the training. Just so you know. So, all right. So, my weekly training was going to be 4 to 5K plus extra gas to and from and the Starbucks run. Then I factored in what did I typically spend on my first service dog when it came to doing things like pet friendly activities. So I'm talking about going places like PetSmart, that's pet friendly, and Joann's, which is pet friendly, or at least was at the time. But you've also got to count movie theaters and festivals and bus fare and parking and all of those things. Going to a park so you can experience hiking trails, things like that. So I looked at what I had been spending roughly on Tomlin. You've also got restaurants, outdoor dining, all that stuff, car rides. And I looked at about $80 a month, which I think was low, but that's what I went with. And that I factored that in at about $1,000 a year. My medical expenses for the dog, for the spay and neuter, the microchip, the heartworm, the checkups, the deworming, all of that stuff, I factored in at between $200 and $2,500 a month, a year, based on the monthly figures. Now, on Pipsy, my current service dog, we actually pay $89 a month for a Banfield plan, which includes his heartworm and his deworming, office visits, and so forth. And then we pay $53 a month for insurance, which I'm not convinced is worth it. So that alone, those two things, adds up. It doesn't quite get up to the 2K, but when you're looking at some of the other things that have to be done, like the spaying and neutering, you're going to want to have some x-rays done on the dog as it gets older to check the hips. And those things were all factored in. Something I did not factor in was grooming, for clipping those toenails and things like that. I forgot to factor that in. So when we take Pipsy to the doctor, it used to be $12 a month and now it's $15 a month. So that's another little thing to factor in. Also, you've got more checkups when your dog is a puppy than you do when he's older. So you've got the increased costs for that. So all of that was going to run between $2,000 to $2,500. Food and treats, $1,200 a year, easy. You want to feed high quality dog food, and you've also got the treats that you're going to be spending money on. We spend over $100 a month, easy on Pipsy now, and I'm going to say about $100 a month previously. Yes, I did. Stellar Piper is saying, did you factor in insurance? Yes, I did. So you've got the food and treats at $1,200. But you've got to buy the gear, right? And so the gear, which for him was a leash, a training collar, martingale collar, and a harness, um, all of that gear comes to between $500 to $550. And you've got, if you're doing a vest, you've got the cost of the vest, you've got the cost of patches and leash wraps, booties, if you're going to put shoes on your dog, all of that factors in. And, just the basics without the booties, 500 to 550. Toys, I factored it in at $100 for the year, which is probably really low, okay? But that's what I factored in. So the total, and if somebody's got the calculator and you want to add it up, I got the total of up to $13,250, not counting the gas, not counting the extra Starbucks visits, things like that. Um, so that's what I've got. And it doesn't count, tipping the trainer, things like that, or the grooming. So that's a pretty high amount. But, you hear service dog training programs are $25,000. You've got that going into your dog, and that's not quite the case. Through looking around, I found Cares Inc. in Kansas. Toss that out here on YouTube, asking people where they got their dog trained. Cares Inc. Cares Inc. It kept coming up. And so I got to looking, and not only did they have a good reputation, but I pulled their IRS 990. I talked to several people who got dogs from there and figured out they had a good reputation, and their cost was $7,000. Now, here's the thing. In addition to that cost, I had to go to Kansas for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, for 10 days for their service dog training. Honestly, I call it doggy boot camp. Okay. And that's the training period where you go and you learn how to work with your dog. So, what are the commands? What are some of the behaviors that you need to look for in your dog? Things like that. That's what you go over during that week to 10 days. And that was standard among all the programs that I looked at, except one where they sent the trainer out to you and you paid extra for the trainer to come out. In addition to your dog and in addition to the training that the dog already had. It's just instead of going there for that week to 10 days, that trainer came to you, and you were responsible for paying all of the trainer's expenses. So with my cost involved, we took the RV, which wound up costing us a good bit because at one point we got stuck paying $5.35 a gallon for gas. Heart failure almost stopped right there on the spot. But the cost for all of that was around $10K. So during the time that I would have been losing, I was able to make payments. So while the dog was growing, I'm paying them. Because the way it works, and the reason why you have a wait for a service dog, is when you fill out your application and send it in, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, CARES had a $50 application fee. But anyway, once you fill it out and you send that in, that's when they start looking for your dog. They go through the lineage of the parents and look and see which ones have created the puppies that are most likely to grow up that have had the most success in what you need. If you need a mobility dog, that's a very different skill than somebody who needs a diabetic alert. Seizure response is very different than the dog that pulls the wheelchair. So, looking at all of that, I was able to make payments during the time I was going to have to be working with trainers and training my own dog and losing that time. Because you're going to lose it anyway. Because, like I said, the dog has to grow. And that, when I looked at that, combined with the energy level that I was going to need to undertrain my second dog, all of that combined, it really made sense for me to go with a program because I was going to get a better trained dog that was less stress because somebody else was going to train it, and get one that, you know, because I was waiting. The other thing is, the really big thing is, when you go with a program dog, they're testing the dog at several different stages. If your dog washes out, that's on the program. The program will step up and they'll replace the dog if your dog washes out within a certain period of time. Whether your trial period is 3 months, 6 months, or a year, if you have owner trained your dog and you get into the process and 2 or 3 months down the road it's apparent that your dog is like dog selective or too friendly or any number of reasons that can cause it to make a career change, if that happens to you, you're out. You don't have any backup. You get to start over buying a dog and getting it trained. And so the process begins all over again. And that was important to me because well over 50 to 75% of dogs that are overtrained wash. And I had always heard 50, but a couple of weeks ago in doing the research for the show, I hit the number 75. So I was like, that's a lot. And I didn't want to take that risk without having some kind of backup. Joining us today is Zion, the service dog. Hey, he's in the chat. He says, I'm back posting on my channel. I just posted a cute new video of my doggy. Any video ideas for me, and I'll be sure to tag you in it. Lots of video ideas, lots and lots. You can show your dog doing any kind of activity or task, showing off its skill, anything like that, buying the gear, looking at the gear, why you selected what gear you did, all of those things I think would be interesting. So I still like those, and I need to do some videos on that. I think going with a program is really important, especially if you're going to look for, service dogs for kids. If you need a service dog for anxiety, you may not want to be training your dog in public. If that makes you nervous, then you might want to go with a program instead of an owner trained dog. Service dogs for seizures, I would strongly suggest a program because you need to be able to train your dog to spot your seizures and how to respond. I couldn't do that. I have grand mal seizures. So I will be unconscious if I have a seizure. And if I'm unconscious, I can't work with my dog. That's my thinking on it. If you have a dog and you're looking for a dog that works with PTSD alert dogs, it's just your comfort level. Some people feel more secure with their dogs out in public than others. So if you have any kind of anxiety or PTSD issues and you may not feel comfortable in public, then going with a program dog may be a better choice. When you get your dog, you're going to draw attention to yourself. That's just the way it is. And that's going to happen whether you go with a program dog or a owner trained dog. So you have to be somewhat secure in dealing with the public. And I think from my personal experience of having done the owner training, I think that was a little tougher at first until I became very familiar with being out in public and being able to say no, leave it, stop, wait, things like that with people staring at me. That's just me. Okay, Zion says, my service dog gear is coming in this week. Would you be interested in watching a gear haul video if I post one? I am always interested in gear hauls. So yeah, I would be interested, me personally. I think other people would too. So yeah. So, okay. So yeah, those are some of the things covering in the service dog blog today. I'm really glad that I went with the program dog. Now, programs can be hugely expensive or not at all. There are some programs where if you fit within certain parameters, you can actually get a free, fully trained dog. So veterans oftentimes can get a free dog. Guide dogs for the blind, some of those types of agencies provide dogs for free. Um, EMS sometimes has the option and can sometimes get a dog for free. But there's a training school out on the West Coast, and they train dogs for $500 because what they're doing is they are training trainers how to train. And it's my understanding that the dog that they train has to pass a public access test for them to pass the course. So, if my understanding is correct, they partner the dog with the trainer at the beginning of the year when they get to a certain part of their courses, and then train the dog for the school year. And then if it passes, then you have a fully trained service dog. And if it does not, the student doesn't pass. So that's another option. So dogs can be free, $500, $7,000, various prices in between, on up to $25,000. It's just a matter of what you feel comfortable paying and the quality of the program. What are other people saying about the programs? Very big thing. Very big things. Let's see. What else? So something else that you need to ask yourself when you're looking at, are service dogs expensive, is what is the cost if you don't have a service dog? And so, Stellar's got to go. Dinner's done, so I'm going to go eat. Okay. Thank you for coming in, Stellar. I appreciate it. Have a good night, you too. Good night. So, what is the cost to you if you need a service dog and don't have one? That's one of the things I think is important to think about. And that was on my mind when I was deciding what to do. And what I mean by that is, how much physical trouble will you get into if you don't have a service dog? Let me show you a photo of my service dog on a day where, I don't know if he saved my life, but he definitely at least saved me from being severely hurt. And that is, we were at a national park, and we were at the amphitheater of a national park. And of course, I can't pull that up when I want to really fast. But anyway, we were at the national park in an amphitheater, and my foot hit the little edge of a step, and I started stumbling and kind of going over. Well, it was a pretty good distance down, and so what happened was Pipsy was able to get around and lean up against me, and I was able to get his harness. And because of him, I didn't go tumbling down. And had he not been there, I would have gotten pretty badly hurt. Okay, here we go. Here is the picture that I took that day. So that's one injury that I didn't get that I can directly point to. It's a good little distance down there, okay? So right up, I hope you can see the cursor. Right up here is where I was, and there was the little hump there where you see the yellow tape to try to tell me that there's a hump, and my foot just hit it just right, and he was able to lean up against me. My husband at the same time was grabbing for me, and I was like, don't help, stop helping, because he's got me. My dog has me, because it wasn't working well with my husband. So That is one time that I can directly point to and say, if my service dog hadn't been there, I'd have gone tumbling down those steps, probably to the bottom of that little pit area there, and I would have gotten severely hurt. Another time that I can point to directly on him keeping me from getting hurt worse was when I was out walking and stumbled and fell. And when that happened, he dived in and got kind of underneath my shoulder and kept my head from hitting the ground. And then he was able to go on up the driveway and meet my husband and stuff. So I wound up with bruised ribs from that fall, but I didn't wind up with broken ribs or a head injury. So I still was injured. I still had an ER bill, but not to the extent that it would have been if they were looking for me to have hit my head or if I had actually cracked a rib, which probably would have happened if my service dog had not been there. So that's two times that I can point to. My service dog saved money, and if you've got a disability, I think you need to look at that too, kind of when you're deciding which way to go and what to do. Let me get to Zion here. Do you have any advice? Because my service dog in training has not been out, and in 2 months because of the hot pavement, and he's going back soon. Do you have any advice to get him used to stores? For that, I would say take him. Go ahead and take him into the stores. Maybe don't stay long. Watch his behavior. If he ducks his tail, if he ducks his ears, if he starts feeling uncomfortable, take him out of the store. Leave. Put him in the car. Tell him good boy for when he does something right. If he's anxious and scared, don't just reach down and say good boy, okay? Because you don't want him to get the idea that being anxious and scared is good. So if you tell him a command like stand, we'll say that, and he's standing there and he's a little nervous, and you can say, hey, good boy, good stand. Or ask him to do a high five if he knows that. Hey, good job, good high five, good boy. And give him that praise, give him that reward. And just really watch his behavior, give him the praise, give him the rewards, and go back out to the car, and then come back at it again later that day, the next day, and so forth. But keep taking them out. If the pavement's hot, go quickly, park as close as you can, keep to the grass as much as possible. And get into the store just as quick as you can to help save the paws. So you can do it. You can do it. He also asked, how long will it take a service dog to get used to boots? Because my boots are coming in this week. That varies among the service dogs, the type of boots, how much you work with him when you're getting him used to boots, and what your comfort level is when he's getting the boots on. And what I mean by that is, at first, they can act very strange when you put boots on. My one service dog, Tomlin, my first one, he didn't have any problems with boots. When I first put him on Pipsy, you would have thought he was dying. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. So put him on for a few minutes, take him off for a few minutes, come back at it again later, put him on for a few more minutes. And you've got to be able to tell yourself, this is not going to last forever. It'll get to the point where eventually he'll be able to wear the boots. If he doesn't, check your boots for the fit. Make sure that they fit well, because if you don't, that's going to create problems in the long run, because the dog will learn to associate boots with pain, and you don't want that. That's not desirable, obviously. Let's see. Let me go back up. Okay, we talked about that. Do you have any advice? Because I might take my service dog in training to school with me, and I don't want him to whine. I just want him to settle and go to sleep. Do you have any advice to settle quietly? First, your service dog in training may not be allowed in school. Um, Service dogs in training do not have protections under the ADA, only fully trained service dogs. So you're going to need to have some conversations with the school as far as what they're going to allow you to do. Um, Classroom stuff in like a high school setting, I'm not really sure what to tell you about that. When I went to college, Tomlin went with me and he was in classes with me. But he was to the point where, I mean, he was fully trained. So he knew to get down and stay down and don't whine. To help with that, I also had a towel, and I do that with Pipsy too. So that kind of defines his space a little bit. Um, but dogs, once they're beyond a year and a half to 2 years, they tend to sleep more. So that's another reason for waiting a little while on your dog. Now, if your dog's high energy, if he's, for example, Husky, Malamute, one of the Arctic breeds, they're going to take a little longer to mature and get out of that play stage because those dogs are known for being very playful. And of course, you know, the whole down, stay, quiet, certainly use those commands. When they start to whine, just quiet, you know. If they whine because they need to go out, there's nothing you can do to stop them from whining except take them out. Um, so you may need to have a really good schedule, especially if you're going to be like with me with college. I knew that to get across campus, I was going to be late to class if I had to take my dog out. So I was able to talk to the teacher, a professor, and say, you know, if I'm ever a few minutes late coming in, it's because I had to take my dog and take care of him on the way to class, which was across campus. So I had that conversation. Okay, so my service dog in training is mostly fully trained. He just needs to work on not sniffing things, and that's all he needs to work on. He's very well trained and very well mannered. Good. Um, but sniffing things is kind of a really big thing when you're in a school because you've got lots of smells. You've got people that will have had dogs at home. They're going to have sometimes food in their backpacks if they brought their lunch, or they'll have the odor of the food in their backpacks from when they brought their lunch. So there is a lot of potential sniff sites, if you will, from going to school that you don't have like at home and so forth. So the sniffing, until he gets fully trained and gets beyond that and really understands, leave it, then I'm sorry. No, I wasn't talking to you. That's a good down. Yeah, good down. Good down. Sorry. He's right here. So when I said Leaveit, he thought I was talking to him. So, yeah, good down. Um, and case in point, like if you're in a store and if I was in a store and he was scared, then I wouldn't say, you know, good boy for being scared. I would say good down or good stand, you know. So that use that as an example. Awesome. Picture of the service dog group. It's in your messenger account. Okay, do you care if I show it? Okay, and Zion says, and when he does sniff, I tell him to leave it, and he will leave it, and he won't sniff it anymore. He does have a very good leave it. Awesome. So, because you're going to need that. That was one of the things that I saw really quickly with Tomlin was the backpacks. The other people who had dogs, you know, there was just all of these opportunities in addition to like just the school in general, just all the things because it's new. So I had that. Yes, show it. All right. Let me go into my messenger. Whoops. Wrong one. But yeah, and the other thing is check and see if you can take your dog with you because of it being still in training. Because a lot of places, like here, like in Tennessee, for example, you can't. Virginia, you can't. I don't know about all the other states, but I do know that they don't have ADA protections like fully trained service dogs do. So that can be a problem. Okay, pulling it up. Yeah, and I'm showing y'all Candy's service dog group that she was involved in when she was training Candy. And here they are. They're all out on an outing. Um, are you at the mall or was this when you went to the zoo? Let me know. But you see everybody behaving nicely. That's so cute. And let's see, was there another one? Whoops. There we go. Oh, this is cute too. Let me pull this other photo up. Um, there we go. There we go. Everybody's so happy. Grins on everybody's faces. Happy looking dogs. There you go. It looks like y'all had just a really good time that day, and I'm glad. That's awesome. Thank you for letting me use the pictures. Oh, the first was the Cheesecake Factory. Okay. That makes sense. Let me go over here. Zion. If he does go to school with me, I was planning on bringing a small blanket that he can lay on and bringing a Kong and a bully stick for him. That might not be a bad idea. I don't know. It's going to depend kind of on the temperament of the dog and how noisy the dog is when he's going for the bully stick and the Kong. Will he be disruptive to the class and that kind of thing? You're going to have some conversations with your colleges or your school, whichever one you're going to because they're going to have to allow the dog to come. They're going to have to make that accommodation, and you're going to have to work within their parameters as far as what relief area, things like that. So you're going to have that conversation. That may or may not be covered under your 504 or IEP. So you'll have to make sure that that's in there too. Also, they may need or want a letter from your physician just stating that you have medical need for your dog. I've heard of schools asking for that too. So, do you know what they require or what they want for service dogs and for service dog training? Have you had that conversation? Okay, so Candy says the first photo that I showed you was the Cheesecake Factory, and the second is the Toledo Zoo. Nice. Yeah, I really appreciated being able to take Pipsy to the zoo. That was just a great outing for him when I went on the trip in New Mexico. I'm going to pull the photos back up here too. Okay, so this one was the Cheesecake Factory. There you go. Did the staff love seeing all the dogs come in? Because quite often they do. They're like, oh, the service dogs are here. And let's see the zoo. There you go. There's the zoo, folks. There you go. Awesome. And I did a little shorts on taking Pipsy to the zoo. That was a lot of fun. When you go to the zoo, there's places that you can and can't go. And the zoo in Albuquerque was very, very nice to give me a list, which was hugely helpful. So that was good. Let's see. Zion, the service dog, says whenever he chews on stuff, he's very, very quiet, which is good. And when he's done, he'll go to sleep because he'll be tired from chewing on it, which is a bonus. There you go. That's great. And Candy says the manager of the Cheesecake Factory was really impressed how there was no resource guarding. We purposely dropped food to reinforce their training. There you go. And she says all staff both at the Cheesecake Factory and the zoo. That's cool. That is cool. I actually had an opportunity. We were going into the steakhouse, and somebody had dropped a bunch of rolls and stuff on the ground. Right, I guess they dropped their to go plate, and I like literally walked Pipsy right on top of it. They were fine with it because it was a mess, and I was like, "Hey, do you care if I walk my service dog through this just to keep him exposed to food and situations and make sure that he doesn't get it?" And they were like, kind of confused at first. And then they were like, sure, go ahead. You can do that. And so I was able to walk him through it and pause him right in front of it without a problem. And that's really a good skill to have. It's really important. Let's see. Zion says, I don't know what the Arizona laws are, but I did search it up for schools. So the school that I'm going to be registered in, I don't know yet. So I won't let you know when I find out. Okay, that'd be great. That would be great because generally they have to make that accommodation and they have to build it into, I forget if it's 504 or IEP. Candy, do you remember? Or maybe they have to do it in both. I don't know. But schools are an interesting ball game, and it may not hurt to go ahead and contact the Department of Justice or have your parents contact the Department of Justice on and just ask them what can schools require, and find out from them. That'll just give you more information when you go to the school to talk to them about your service dog. Let's see. Let me pull up here if I can pull it up. I want to see if I have a picture of Tomlin in class that I can show you. Pull that up. I'm not 100% sure if I do have that on my computer or not. Let's see. Somewhere I have a photo of him in class with me. Granted, it's at college, but it shows him tucked under the table there. And that was super important for him to be able to get under there to keep him from getting stepped on. That was a really big deal. I had to do some extra work with him to really make sure he was under the table. And I started using the term get comfortable. And that's when I would try to let him get into that kind of tighter ball to get out of the way. You are possibly going to have some problems if you take like a biology class or a chemistry class because there are chemicals there. You may have some problems taking your dog into those classes. I know even at college level, we had that. Let's see. I'm flipping through all these photos and I don't see a single one. Oh, it's probably on my hard drive somewhere. I am sorry. I thought I had that. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. But, just know you may have to do some extra work because he's going to have to really curl up into a tight space. I don't know what size your dog is, but I had a 90-pound husky, and well, he between 80 to 90 pounds. He was always in that range. So it was kind of tough for him to get really small, but he was able to do it, and we had to. So, um, Zion says, if I can't bring him anything that you want, I'll probably bring him calming treats where we head off to school. We can head off to school or just exercising, so he'll be tired. And you may be able to take something for him to chew on, like if you're in gym class, he might be able to chew on it there, but you may not be able to chew on it like if you're taking a math class, that kind of thing. Um, so, you know, try it. Talk to your school, and I would say try it and see how it works. It's going to be kind of hard for me to imagine a dog going all day, bus all day at school, and then off the bus without having some kind of treat. You're also going to have to work on building in his water bowl schedule. So you're going to need eating schedule, watering schedule, and release schedule with him. And you're going to have to work that out with the school as far as where, how often, and so forth. Because you may not have enough time. If you only have 5 minutes to change classes, you may not have time to do what you need to do without being late to class. So you may have to work something out with a teacher, like I did with my professor. Handy says, I sent you some zoo pictures where there were just a heavy metal mesh that separates the animals and the people. There was a metal guard railing to prevent people getting too close to the mesh. Gotcha. Let me see if I can pull that up. But hopefully, your school has gone through the situations before and have had service dogs before you. If so, that makes life a lot easier because they will have walked this path before and already have it in place. Oh, Candy, okay. Let me see. So, is this okay? Is that what you mean with the mesh? And is that a grizzly or a brown bear? Do you remember? Oh, never mind. Probably I'm the only one that would wonder about that. My Alaska background coming to play there. Aw, here's some more. Got to show you the bears. Okay, and Candy said she didn't know school policies. Okay. I was going to see if you remembered. There you go. There's some more bears. Gotcha. Now, see, we couldn't get that close to the bears at all with our dogs, and that's okay because the zoos. The other thing about zoos is like they know their animals and they know their animals' personalities. And that makes a difference. And some conservation centers, like like in Alaska, there's a wonderful one on the Kenai Peninsula in Girdwood, and there were areas where I couldn't take the dog out of the car just because of spooking the animals. It's not something you want to do. So, so they were very upfront. No, and part of it is the wolf exhibit. No getting the dog out near that, and that makes total sense to me because you wouldn't want them out around that. But still, you know, expose the dog to as much as you can, Zion, before you go to school, even if it can be zoos or whatever. Yay! Okay, I wondered if it wasn't a brown bear. Yes, a brown bear. They were grizzlies, but they were asleep. Okay, gotcha. Hey, Valerie Reese is here. Hi, Valerie. How are you? And Candy says, hi, Valerie. Hey, you're up and you're back in here, huh? Okay. He went from the doorway to my husband and now he's back. Yeah, you. What? Let me see. Come around this way. What? Oh, we're just gonna come over here then? All right. You want to hop up? Say hi. Good boy. Good up. Good pets. Yeah, good pets. What you doing? You've been playing with Dad, haven't you? All right. Good boy. So, yeah, he's been kind of a mess today, but that's all right. Another problem that you may have, Zion, when you go to class is the same problem I had in college where everybody wanted to pet him. Everybody. So to help me out with that, one of my professors actually made an announcement when at the very start of class, like day 2, and she said, "Thank you all. We have a service dog in here. With her permission, I'm sharing that if the dog barks, if it whines excessively at her, that's an alert. So she will need to go out and take the dog with her, and please basically like clear a path to let me out easily. And also so they wouldn't think that Tomlin was just misbehaving when he was actually alerting." And that really helped. Also, as part of that, she said, and I'm going to ask you to please not pet the service dog. Don't distract. She was phenomenal. Really helped tremendously in her classroom. So you may have a guidance counselor or somebody at your high school that could help you out that way also. And that nipped a lot of problems in the bud in her classroom. The other classes that I had, the professors were like, it's a dog. They didn't do that. So as a result, I had people constantly, right at the first of the school year, trying to pet my dog. And I went through that both semesters. And it's just the way it was. So if the guidance counselors could help you out with that, maybe when they send notification to all of your teachers about the IEP or the 504, that might be something that you might want to consider. Your parents may even want to ask for that when they meet with the school. Let's see. Candy says, if you attend church and your church would allow, that's a place where a service dog would spend a long period in a relatively lay quiet. Yeah, churches do tend to be kind of loud at times, especially, if the praise band is playing or the organ is playing, it's just loud. But churches don't have to allow service dogs, so you will need to have a conversation before you take the dog in, just to make sure you're not going to be turned away when you get there. Yeah. And she says she hopes that helps, Zion. So it sounds like you're doing a really good job so far, and you need to be proud of that. And I hope you are. It's just that schools are kind of this wild card. So probably talking to the ADA in advance, to the Department of Justice about what they can ask for under the ADA might be a good idea. So, yeah. All right. Well, my 1 hour show is almost an hour and a half. I hope that's okay with everyone. I do try to be cognizant and a good steward of your time. So thank you for bearing with me on that. So I hope some of this helps if you're looking at trying to decide, how much a service dog costs and if you can afford a service dog. Hopefully, this helps. I had to do a lot of fundraising to be able to afford to get my service dog. Most of us don't have an extra $7,000 plus miscellaneous expenses running around that we can just tap into. So with me, it was a lot of fundraising. Some of the people right here in this chat right now on this channel are some of the ones that helped me out. And people helped me out, and I had no idea that they would. And I'm so grateful for that. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel and talking about service dogs, because I want to give back. And that's how I'm doing it. And showing him on the trips, whether we're van life, RV, road trip, showing him on that and showing people that they can do it is part of the way I'm giving back too. Let's see. Candy the Wee Service Dog says Candy loves the music. That's correct, Gail. However, many churches include service dog handlers and their dogs. Yes, many do. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb based on my experience and say that most churches probably do. However, I also have to say that I have talked with pastors and committee chairs and had people contact me that were all about how do we keep a service dog out of the church, and if we allow a service dog in, can we limit them to one corner? What can we do, and so forth. And I think that's a difficult place to be in. What I told the last pastor was, are you looking at being in ministry, or hold on, what are you? No, I didn't. They're not there anymore. Excuse me just a second. Yeah, they're not there anymore. I moved them. He had some toys that had rolled behind my music stand and underneath my little table there. So he was looking for those. So anyway, I told a pastor, I said, you've got to look at what's more important to you. Is it more important that you protect your building from your perceived notion that the dog may tear something up? Or is it more important for you to be inclusive and to allow someone who has a disability to come into your church and be able to worship? So I don't know what the end result of that is. I am still waiting on the pastor to get back with me. Hopefully they decided that there was a way that they could work it out. I don't know. And I will say that this one particular pastor had a problem once before with somebody trying to bring an ESA in, which isn't necessarily bad, but this ESA wasn't housebroken. So that kind of led to a problem there. Kenny the Wee Service Dog says, one thing for beginner service dog handlers to know is we are ambassadors of service dog teams, whether we want to or not. True. And I think that is really important to always keep in mind. People watch us, and how we act affects how the next service dog team is accepted. And that's, we may not like that, but that's the reality of it. So, yeah. And I always try to go out of my way and to be nice when being out in public and dealing with the public. It's not always easy, but I try to go out of my way to do that because I want to make things easier for the next team, not harder. So, yeah. So, okay there. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Give you just a minute here. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and hanging out with me. and being here. I hope this helps with how much does the service dog cost and some of the dog training costs. I hope that helps you make your decision. Always draw me a comment if you've got other questions. Come into the live stream again Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern. We're going to be talking on service dogs, about service dogs. September is National Service Dog Month. So we're doing this in honor of that. So we're going to be talking about it all the Saturdays for this month. And Candy says, what does she say? Gail, I want to thank you for all the years you've helped me to be the best service dog handler. Candy makes it easy. Candy is awesome. I will just say, Candy is awesome. I've met Candy. I've met Laurel. Totally, completely fabulous. Awesome. So thank you. That would be good too. That would be good too. So, all right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight, hanging out. I hope you have a fabulous week. And if I don't see you on other videos this week, because I'm behind, so if I don't see you on other videos, have a great week, and I will see you Saturday at 7:30 Eastern. So y'all take care. Have a great night, great week. And always, #BeBodacious. Don't let life get in the way of living. Thanks for watching. Good night.